The ransom communications presented an immediate and profound anomaly. Categorically, in a conventional abduction for ransom scenario, the perpetrator's primary instruction is silence. The demand is for no police, no media. Yet in this case, the subject inverted the paradigm entirely, broadcasting his actions to the world. By delivering his demands directly to the media, the perpetrator was, in fact, revealing his true motivation, a detail a seasoned FBI criminal profiler immediately identified. This was not about financial gain. This was about celebrity obsession, a deep-seated psychological fixation, and the ultimate exertion of control. But while profilers deconstructed the architecture of his mind, a separate team was analyzing something far less abstract. They focused on what he left behind. For 41 minutes inside Nancy Guthrie's residence, every exhalation contaminated the environment, shedding his DNA into the air. Every second his mobile device was powered on, it communicated with the local network, leaving a digital breadcrumb within a 2-mile radius. He made several mistakes, and each one is now permanently encoded in digital data, which is being processed at this moment by a specialized FBI unit, the Cellular Analysis Survey Team. This is the same unit whose work was instrumental in the identification of Bryan Kohberger. They do not profile what a subject wanted. They methodically reconstruct what he did. According to the consensus of over 100 FBI agents and investigators on this case, the trail he left behind is substantial enough to lead directly to him. Before we delve deeper into the profiler's psychological assessment and the forensic team's discoveries, it's important to understand the methodology. This is an examination of the evidence. We are moving beyond the headlines. We are investigating the forensic evidence, the behavioral psychology, and the emergent technology behind cases that command a resolution. Every detail is critical. Our subject is Nancy Guthrie, who vanished from her Tucson, Arizona home in the pre-dawn hours of February 1st, 2026. She was 84 years old, living independently in the quiet Catalina foothills neighborhood. A retired educator, a mother, a grandmother. Her daughter, Savannah Guthrie, is the co-anchor of NBC's Today show, one of the most recognized figures in American television. On the evening of January 31st, Nancy dined at the home of her daughter, Annie. At approximately 9:48 p.m., Annie's husband, Tommaso, drove Nancy back to her residence. Security logs confirm her garage door closed at 9:50 p.m. This is the last verified moment that anyone can place Nancy Guthrie inside her home, alive and accounted for. At 1 a.m. on February 1st, her doorbell camera went offline. At 2 a.m., the data synchronization between her cardiac pacemaker and her iPhone ceased. When family arrived at her home around 11 a.m. on February 1st to perform a welfare check, prompted by her absence from a virtual church service, Nancy was gone. Her phone was on the premises. Her medication was untouched. Her vehicle was in the garage. The only thing absent from the scene was Nancy herself, but the evidence indicates she did not leave alone. Blood, confirmed by DNA analysis to be Nancy's, was discovered on the front porch, and surveillance footage, recovered by the Bureau, captured a masked figure at her door in the hours before dawn. What followed was one of the most intensive missing persons investigations in recent American history. And what the investigators uncovered, regarding both what this man wanted and what he left behind, tells a story he never intended for anyone to hear. Jim Clemente is not merely a criminal profiler. He dedicated 22 years of service to the Federal Bureau of Investigation. His purview included child abduction cases, serial homicide investigations, and crimes against children for the Bureau's renowned Behavioral Analysis Unit. After retiring, he leveraged that experience as a writer and producer for the television series Criminal Minds, a show built entirely upon the science of psychological profiling. When Clemente examined the surveillance data and the ransom communications in the Nancy Guthrie case, his analysis carried the weight of that extensive history. He perceived an anomaly, a detail that eluded the untrained eye. The communications, labeled as ransom notes, were a facade. Their true purpose was something other than financial extortion. To understand the deviation in the Nancy Guthrie case, one must first establish the baseline for a typical kidnapping for ransom scenario. In the standard model, the communication protocol is engineered for brevity. It is direct, stripped of all extraneous detail, and fixated solely on the logistics of payment. The subject's objective is capital. The timeline is compressed. The desire is for minimal contact to reduce exposure. Threats are leveraged against law enforcement involvement. Further threats are made against media engagement. The implicit message is an ultimatum. Comply in silence, or the victim is terminated. The communications concerning Nancy Guthrie deviated sharply from this established protocol. Within the initial 2-week window following her disappearance, no fewer than 2 separate ransom demands materialized. Crucially, both were directed not at the family, but at media organizations. This circumvention of direct family contact is a significant behavioral marker. One was routed to the entertainment news outlet TMZ. A second was disseminated to local news affiliates in Arizona. While a monetary demand was present, the notes were heavily layered with detailed commentary on the investigation itself. They contained specific, intimate details regarding Nancy's private medical history. They included pointed statements directed at or concerning Savannah Guthrie. The author was actively engaging with and attempting to shape the public narrative. An excerpt from the communication acquired by TMZ reads as follows: "You believe you understand the situation. You are mistaken. But you will learn. This is not the language of a transaction. It is the language of theater, the work of a subject fixated on controlling the narrative, not merely collecting a payout." A subsequent note made a specific reference to Nancy's pacemaker, adding the psychological pressure that time for her required medication was expiring. Our behavioral analysis concluded that this degree of specificity points to a subject who had conducted extensive research into Nancy's vulnerabilities. This was a perpetrator who needed the family, and Savannah in particular, to internalize the fact that he held absolute dominion over Nancy's life and death. As former FBI profiler Jim Clemente noted in an interview with investigative journalist Brian Enton, this behavioral pattern constitutes a significant red flag. When an offender's primary motive is financial gain, the operational imperative is to minimize contact and thereby reduce exposure. They secure the funds and vanish. However, when the primary motivation is psychological in nature, when the subject craves attention, when the goal is to forcibly integrate themselves into the life of a public figure, when the objective is to seize control of a high-profile crisis, they adopt the opposite strategy, initiating contact with the media. They ensure a global audience is observing their every move. Their intent is to become a central character in the unfolding drama. This pattern aligns with what former FBI profiler Mary Ellen O'Toole defines as mission-oriented behavior. The offense is not predicated on material acquisition. Rather, the crime is an instrument to fulfill a profound psychological need. And in the Nancy Guthrie case, Clemente posits that this psychological compulsion is centered squarely on Savannah Guthrie. Consider the methodology of target selection. Nancy Guthrie possesses no significant personal wealth. She maintains no public profile. Her residence is a modest home in an unassuming neighborhood. She lacks access to millions in liquid assets. Her daughter, however, does not. Savannah Guthrie is the co-anchor of a premier American morning news program. Her work involves interviewing presidents, celebrities, and world leaders. Her digital footprint includes over 1.2 million Instagram followers. Her image is broadcast into homes nationwide each morning. She is, by any objective measure, a celebrity, a fact that is central to Jim Clemente's analysis. The abductor's primary psychological fixation was not on the mother, Nancy. The true object of obsession was the daughter, Savannah. This is the profile of an individual craving entry into a celebrity's insulated world, fueled by a pathological need to hold some significance, any significance, to that public figure. It's about forcing a reaction, compelling the celebrity to think about them, to react to their existence, to grant them even a flicker of acknowledgement. The act of taking the mother represents the ultimate violation, a form of forced, non-consensual intimacy. The Bureau's Behavioral Analysis Unit has dedicated decades to the study of crimes rooted in celebrity obsession. It is a well-documented pathology. The offenders in these cases seldom match the pop culture caricature of the screaming, frenzied fan. The reality is far more insidious. They are often quiet, unassuming individuals. We typically see socially isolated individuals who construct elaborate, deeply immersive internal narratives surrounding their fantasized relationship with the celebrity. Within the architecture of their own minds, this relationship is not a fantasy. It is a concrete reality. They engage in a form of surveillance, meticulously studying the celebrity's life and tracking their every move through social media. Through this process, they learn the patterns of their target's life, their daily routines, the people in their inner circle, and most critically, their vulnerabilities. And a powerful delusion takes root, a conviction that if they could just breach that distance, if they could somehow force an encounter and compel the celebrity to finally times see times them, then the celebrity would understand. They would reciprocate the feelings and finally acknowledge the special connection that the subject knows is there. When that fantasy fails to materialize, when the celebrity remains impossibly distant and inaccessible, the psychological pressure intensifies, and the subject's need for validation escalates into something far more dangerous. And our case histories show us precisely where that escalation leads. July 18th, 1989. Los Angeles, California. The subject, Rebecca Sheffer, aged 21. An actress known for her role in the CBS sitcom My Sister Sam. With film credits to her name, she was on the precipice of a major breakthrough into stardom. The perpetrator, one Robert John Bardo, had been fixated on her for a period of 3 years. The pattern of his obsession was textbook. It began with dozens of letters addressed to her. He escalated his efforts, appearing in person at the studio where her television show was being filmed. Denied access by studio security, he adapted his strategy, hiring a private investigator to obtain her home address. On July 18th, he stood on her doorstep and pressed the doorbell. As Rebecca answered the door, he discharged his weapon once, striking her in the chest at point-blank range. She expired on her own doorstep. During interrogation, Bardo stated that he killed her because he felt she had betrayed him. Specifically, she had betrayed him by appearing in a film that contained a scene of intimacy with another actor. In the distorted reality he had constructed, she belonged exclusively to him. Her on-screen performance was, in his view, a profound violation of their shared bond. A bond that existed nowhere else but inside the confines of his own psyche. Rebecca Sheffer's murder became a landmark case, directly precipitating the enactment of the first anti-stalking laws across the United States. Before this incident, the act of stalking was not even a recognized criminal offense in most states, and yet the psychological pattern was already starkly clear. You have an isolated individual with profound issues of self-worth who constructs an elaborate fantasy relationship with a celebrity. When the real world inevitably intrudes upon and contradicts that fantasy, the outcome is frequently violent. March 31st, 1995, Corpus Christi, Texas. The subject of the attack was Selena Quintanilla, just 23 years old. Her professional standing was immense, a Grammy-winning Tejano music superstar. She had earned the title, the Queen of Tejano Music. Furthermore, she possessed a significant crossover appeal that positioned her on the cusp of becoming a mainstream American pop icon. The assailant in this case, Yolanda Saldivar, had successfully integrated herself into the victim's life, serving as her fan club president. She had further deepened this access by taking on the role of managing Selena's retail boutiques. She was an individual deeply trusted by the victim's family. However, behind this facade, she was systematically embezzling money. The catalyst for violence occurred during a meeting in a motel room where Selena confronted Saldivar regarding missing financial documents. In that room, Saldivar fired a single shot, striking the victim in the back. Despite the severe injury, Selena managed to make her way to the motel lobby before collapsing. As she collapsed, with her final breaths, she identified her assailant. In the interrogation room, Yolanda Saldivar's narrative was one of tragic miscalculation. She claimed the intent was never to murder Selena. The true target, according to her testimony, was herself. She had engineered a scenario where Selena would be the sole audience to her self-destruction. The objective was to impose a lifetime of guilt, a crushing weight of responsibility, forcing the star to finally comprehend the profound nature of Saldivar's pathological attachment. And there it is again, the pattern. A relationship constructed entirely in the mind, followed by a perceived, unforgivable betrayal, culminating in violence, the ultimate expression of absolute control. December 8th, 1980, New York City. John Lennon was 40 years old. He was a founding member of the Beatles, arguably the most culturally significant musical group in modern history. After a 5-year withdrawal from public life to raise his son, he was just beginning his return. The subject, Mark David Chapman, harbored a years-long obsession, viewing Lennon as a profound hypocrite who preached peace and simplicity from within a gilded cage of immense wealth. Chapman traveled from Hawaii to New York, a pilgrimage with a singular, dark purpose. He kept a vigil outside the Dakota Lennon's apartment building. The psychological irony is staggering. Earlier that same day, Lennon had signed an autograph for him. That evening, as Lennon and his wife, Yoko Ono, returned to the perceived safety of their home, Chapman discharged 5 rounds into Lennon's back. Lennon was pronounced dead at the hospital. Chapman's stated motive was chillingly simple. He craved fame. He needed the world to recognize his name, seeking to violently graft himself onto the legend of John Lennon. In this, he was successful. His name is now irrevocably linked to the death of an icon. The pattern repeats. Obsession, a desperate hunger for significance, and violence as the final, brutal act of a forced connection. In a psychological analysis of each of these cases, the subject's primary driver is almost never financial. It is purely psychological. They possess a deep-seated need to matter to an individual who is completely unaware of their existence. When conventional means of gaining recognition inevitably fail, when the letters remain unanswered, when the courts issue restraining orders, when security personnel deny them access, the subject escalates. They manufacture a situation that forces the celebrity to see them, to know them, to finally acknowledge their presence. And according to the profile constructed in the Nancy Guthrie case by Jim Clemente, this is precisely the dynamic at play. By abducting Nancy, the unsub has forced Savannah Guthrie into a twisted form of interaction, not face-to-face, but through the crucible of public appeals, through the carefully managed channel of ransom communications, and through the unbearable, constant awareness that he, and he alone, controls her mother's fate. Former FBI agent Brad Garrett, a veteran of the Bureau's Threat Assessment Unit, articulated this very dynamic. When an offender targets the family member of a public figure, particularly a parent, they are sending a very specific message. That message is unambiguous. I can reach you. I can infiltrate your life. You are no longer capable of ignoring me. This is not a transaction about ransom. This is an exercise in forcing a relationship where none exists. Consider the events that unfolded in the days following Nancy's disappearance on February 7th. 2026. Savannah Guthrie appeared on national television, flanked by her siblings, Annie and Cameron. It was her first time facing the public since the abduction. Her composure was fractured. Her voice betrayed her emotion on multiple occasions. She then addressed the abductor directly, looking into the camera. "If you are watching," she began, "please know that my mother is a kind and gentle person. She has never brought harm to anyone. She does not deserve this. I am begging you, please, let her come home to us." On Instagram, a calculated campaign of emotional appeals began. She released childhood photographs of Nancy, imploring the public for any information. Every significant news organization amplified her transmissions. Her anguished pleas for help propagated across social media, reaching an audience numbering in the millions. For a mind consumed by a psychological fixation on Savannah, this is not a catastrophe. It is profound validation. He craved her focus, and he secured it. For weeks, Savannah Guthrie's public existence was forced to orbit his actions, his every move dictating her own. Every tear she shed, every public statement she delivered, all of it was a direct result of his actions. This constitutes the ultimate expression of control for an individual with this psychological architecture. Former FBI profiler Mary Elena Toole clarified for News Nation that subjects exhibiting this profile are frequently motivated by deep-seated feelings of powerlessness. In their own lives, they are ghosts, unseen and unheard. They operate under the belief that no one perceives them, that no one attributes value to them, that their very existence goes unacknowledged. Therefore, they engineer a scenario in which they become impossible to ignore. By removing Nancy from her environment, the kidnapper compelled the world to turn its gaze upon him. He coerced Savannah Guthrie, one of the media's most influential figures, into recognizing him. He compelled federal authorities to act. Investigators were forced to divert hundreds of resources solely to his pursuit. For the first time in his life, he had significance. That psychological imperative is paramount. This is the element that defines this offender's danger, because even with his capture, even with Nancy's recovery, a fundamental need has been met. His primary psychological objective has already been achieved. He made Savannah Guthrie break down on a national broadcast. He made the Federal Bureau of Investigation hunt him. He mattered. Jim Clemente's psychological assessment suggests a subject who is a white male, likely in his 30s or 40s. The profile indicates a probable connection to the Tucson area. This is an individual who has meticulously followed Savannah Guthrie's career for a significant period. He may have made prior attempts at contact fan correspondence that received no reply, social media messages left unread. There may have been attempts to infiltrate public events only to be intercepted by security. This is an individual whose obsession escalated when those overtures were ignored or actively rebuffed. Clemente's analysis also points to a subject with a documented history of obsessive behavioral patterns. It's conceivable there are previous incidents of stalking. It's conceivable there are restraining orders filed against him. There may have even been prior interventions from mental health services. This is not the profile of someone who had a sudden impulse to abduct the mother of a public figure. This is the profile of an individual with a long-term, deeply rooted pattern of fixation. This is an individual who has been moving toward this event for months, perhaps even years. The FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit is currently cross-referencing this profile with their threat assessment databases. Their focus is on subjects who have issued threats against Savannah Guthrie in the past. They are examining records of individuals who have appeared uninvited at the network studios. They are scrutinizing individuals with established histories of celebrity stalking. And according to former FBI agent Jennifer Coffin-Daffer, that particular database is more exclusive than the public imagines. We are not dealing with thousands of potential subjects who match this profile. We are dealing with dozens, possibly fewer. When you filter the data down to Caucasian males, aged 30 to 50, located in the Tucson area, With a documented history of fixation on Savannah Guthrie or her family, the pool of potential subjects becomes exceptionally small. And the Bureau is meticulously examining every single individual within that pool. But a psychological profile alone will not close this case. Because while Jim Clemente was deconstructing what the kidnapper desired, forensic units were busy analyzing what the kidnapper left behind. And the evidence he unknowingly deposited at the scene will ultimately be his undoing. He concealed his identity with a mask. He wore gloves to prevent fingerprints. He was encased in a full-body suit, worn as a layer over his regular clothing. He perceived himself as forensically sophisticated. He operated under the assumption that he had outmaneuvered the science of physical evidence collection, but his calculations omitted a single, constant biological imperative. For 41 minutes, he was a living, breathing presence inside Nancy Guthrie's residence, and every exhalation left an indelible signature, a biological ghost he could never recall. There is a fundamental truth about DNA that eludes most. It requires neither blood nor a perfect fingerprint. Direct physical contact with any surface is, in fact, entirely unnecessary. One must simply occupy a given space for a period of time. The simple act of respiration expels a cloud of microscopic markers into the immediate environment. Aerosolized saliva, particles of mucus, a cascade of cellular material from the mouth, the throat, and the lungs, which over the course of 41 minutes in an enclosed area accumulates into a significant deposit. A critical observation was made by former FBI profiler Jim Clemente during his analysis. His review of the surveillance recordings revealed a crucial flaw in the subject's preparations. The suspect's mask concealed his nose and mouth, certainly, but it was not a hermetically sealed device. It was porous fabric, and his eyes remained entirely exposed. So too were his eyebrows and his eyelashes. An eyelash follicle is a rich source of DNA, and it is shed as a matter of biological course. The footage, at certain moments, also provides a partial view of his mustache. Like all hair, it continuously casts off its genetic signature. Each gesture toward the face, every spoken word, is an act of transference for this fundamental genetic code. Yet, the most potent vector may well be the breath itself, particularly when an individual is engaged in physical exertion, when the subject is under stress, when their heart rate climbs, their exhalations become saturated with microscopic droplets of saliva. If that individual is verbalizing, the volume of genetic material being dispersed increases at an exponential rate. For 41 minutes, the perpetrator moved within the confines of Nancy Guthrie's home. The timeline is precise and unforgiving. The doorbell camera feed was terminated at 1 a.m. At 2 a.m., Nancy's pacemaker ceased its routine synchronization. That is a 41-minute window, 41 minutes of respiration, 41 minutes of transit through the residence, 41 minutes of contaminating every room he set foot in with his own unique biological trace. That residence was subsequently deconstructed by investigators as a sterile crime scene. Sheriff Chris Nanos later confirmed the recovery of foreign DNA from within the home. This genetic material does not belong to Nancy, nor does it trace back to any of her close relatives. The sample is complex, a mixture of genetic material from several individuals. This inherently complicates the analysis process. Nevertheless, Sheriff Nanos has been unequivocal on this point. The recovered DNA is undergoing intensive analysis and is considered potentially the most decisive element of physical proof in this investigation. In a related development, a pair of gloves, consistent with the description of those worn by the masked intruder, were located approximately 2 miles from the Guthrie home. These items were subjected to rigorous DNA analysis. The resulting profile was cross-referenced with CODIS, that is the FBI's vast national repository, which holds more than 26 million genetic profiles. No match was found. But a presence in the federal database is no longer a prerequisite for identification. This is because the Bureau is now deploying forensic investigative genetic genealogy. It is the very same methodology that unmasked the Golden State Killer after 40 years and led to the identification of Bryan Kohberger in a matter of weeks. The method involves constructing an entire genetic family tree from the crime scene DNA, then systematically searching for relatives across millions of public profiles. These searches leverage consumer genealogy platforms such as 23, and Me, and Ancestry DNA to forge a connection. A prior conviction isn't necessary for a man to be found. All that's required is a single, distant relative who, out of simple curiosity, submitted their DNA. Sheriff Nanos has affirmed that the subject's genetic material is currently being cross-referenced against public genealogy databases. The primary obstacle remains the integrity of the sample. Contaminated or mixed profiles demand significantly more time and advanced computational resources to isolate a target. However, as noted by genetic genealogist Barbara Ray Venter in her analysis for CNN, once a viable genetic profile is successfully extracted, the subject's anonymity is on a countdown, somewhere within the vast architecture of a genealogy database. This man's entire lineage is mapped out. His own bloodline, individuals who submitted their genetic material years ago in a benign search for their ancestry, are entirely unaware of how their genetic information may become the singular thread that unravels his entire existence. A person cannot cease their biological functions, and that very breath may be what guides investigators to him while the DNA analysis proceeds over weeks. In parallel, his cell tower data was being processed in real time. A cellular device is the silent, impartial witness to every moment of a person's life. That was the assessment provided by digital forensics expert Heather Barnhart to NBC News about this case. Barnhart's expertise was instrumental in the Bryan Kohberger investigation. She possesses an intimate understanding of how this digital footprint can dismantle an offender's entire narrative. Currently, special agents from the FBI's Cellular Analysis Survey Team, or CAST, are meticulously deconstructing the cell tower data from the perimeter surrounding Nancy's home. Every time a phone is powered on, it establishes a connection with nearby cellular towers. Even without active use, no calls, no data transmission, the device is in constant communication with those towers to maintain signal strength. And every one of these connections is logged. They are time-stamped with absolute precision and archived by the service carriers. Upon the execution of a federal warrant, the Bureau gains access to a comprehensive geographical and temporal map of every device active within a designated zone. During a specific window of time, in the Nancy Guthrie case, investigators procured the data for all cellular devices that registered with towers inside a 2-mile radius between 10 a.m. on January 31st and 6 a.m. on February 1st. The initial data set encompasses thousands of individual devices, but the CAST analysis transcends a mere quantitative review. Their objective, as Heather Barnhart clarified, is to identify the anomaly. One must first establish a baseline of normal human behavior in order to isolate the predatory. And in this model, this person's device becomes the digital signature of that predatory behavior. CAST initiates its process by constructing a comprehensive profile of historically normal activity for the target area. This includes identifying residential devices that are consistently present and transient devices associated with regular commuter traffic. From this baseline, they begin the search for the statistical outlier. A device appearing on multiple occasions prior to February 1st suggests possible pre-operational surveillance. A device active during the critical overnight hours of the disappearance with no prior or subsequent history in the area is a significant indicator. A device that is deliberately powered down at a crucial time only to reactivate at a distant location. This last behavioral marker was the critical error made by Bryan Kohberger. It was a case on which Barnhart was a key analyst. Kohberger's device went dark as he approached the residence at approximately 4 a.m. He operated under the illusion of digital invisibility, but upon his egress, he reverted to habit, reactivating the device for navigational purposes. This action immediately created a sequence of pings, mapping his exact route of travel back toward Washington state. The absence of data, the deliberate digital blackout, transformed from a void into compelling evidence of premeditation. It demonstrated a clear consciousness of guilt. If you analyze the Brian Koberger subject, his device was powered down, preventing any data connection with the tower near King Road. However, upon departure, he reactivated it, succumbing to the common human dependency on cellular navigation. That single decision forged an irrefutable digital pathway that led investigators directly to his door. The professional assessment from Barnhart posits that Nancy's abductor fell into a common, yet critical, operational trap. The behavioral pattern is predictable. Unless the subjects possess intimate knowledge of the target area, their device goes dark, only to suddenly re-emerge on the grid. Therefore, the analytical focus must not be confined to the towers proximal to Nancy's residence. The directive is to widen the geofence by several miles, casting a much broader net. The task force's digital forensics unit is isolating 4 distinct data signatures. First, evidence of pre-operational reconnaissance, or what we term scouting trips. If the perpetrator conducted physical surveillance of the neighborhood beforehand, his device would have registered its presence on local towers during each incursion. The task force is actively flagging any devices that appeared in the vicinity repeatedly before the 1st of February. Second, the calculated descent into a digital blackout, a deliberate deactivation of the phone during the abduction, creates a data gap. This void is not an absence of evidence. It is the evidence, a clear signature of forethought and planning. Third, the reacquisition signal, or the exit ping. The moment the device was reactivated after clearing the immediate area, protocol dictates it would handshake with the nearest available cell tower. That single ping acts as a digital signpost, revealing the perpetrator's vector of escape to the investigative team. Fourth, the phenomenon of network proximity registration. Even if the subject never actively authenticated with Nancy's Wi-Fi network, the device's passive scanning for available networks would have been close enough to touch her router, leaving an indelible digital artifact. This specific data point can be meticulously cross-referenced with the corresponding cellular tower logs for corroboration. This methodology was confirmed by former FBI agent Jason Pack. The volume of raw data is described as mountainous. A list of potential subjects has been generated and systematically evaluated. Some individuals have been officially cleared through this process, while others remain subjects of active interest. The perpetrator labored under a critical delusion that by powering down his device, he could achieve absolute invisibility. His critical failure was in not understanding a fundamental truth. The very gap he created is a form of evidence. The moment he re-emerged onto the network, he dropped the first breadcrumb. And a team like this is designed for one purpose: to follow a trail of breadcrumbs, no matter how faint, to its absolute end. On the 26th of February, an official from the Federal Bureau of Investigation confirmed that the agency had already amassed a staggering 10,000 hours of video evidence in connection to the case. To put that figure in perspective, 10,000 hours is the equivalent of 416 consecutive days of footage playing without interruption. Were one to sit down at this very moment and begin watching it all at normal speed, they would not finish viewing the material for well over a year. But investigators are not engaged in a manual frame-by-frame review. They are deploying a powerful video analytics platform engineered to sift through colossal archives of footage within minutes. The system functions through the application of artificial intelligence and complex pattern recognition. An analyst inputs search parameters, such as blue car, 0100 hours, February 1st, and the software executes a comprehensive scan of every feed, isolating each instance of a matching vehicle within the specified temporal window. It then compiles and delivers a comprehensive report of all hits in under 5 minutes. As former investigator Chris McDonough explained, the process is far from manual. This is not a description of officers stationed in a dark room, staring at monitors for interminable hours. What you are describing is the deployment of sophisticated algorithms designed to process terabytes of data, systematically isolating vehicles of interest and tracking their patterns of movement. These systems construct intricate event timelines with automated precision. The sheer scale of this operation was confirmed by Sheriff Nanos. Investigators are systematically analyzing hundreds of thousands of vehicles. The distinction is crucial. Not mere hundreds, not even thousands. The scope is measured in the hundreds of thousands. A figure of that magnitude becomes logical only under the assumption that the task force has pulled data from a vast network of traffic and intersection cameras. This would logically extend to highway entry points, cameras monitoring commercial corridors, and other public infrastructure. A wide-spectrum infrastructure surveillance grid designed to capture every single vehicle moving through a defined geographical area within a precise temporal window. This ocean of data is being meticulously cross-referenced against a single, pivotal piece of footage from a home security camera located just 2.5 miles from Nancy's residence. That device captured an image of a vehicle at precisely 2 o'clock in the morning on the 1st of February. This timestamp is not a coincidence. It is a critical synchronicity. Nancy's pacemaker registered its final signal at 2 o'clock in the morning. Just 8 minutes after that, a vehicle was captured on another camera, its location perfectly consistent with a subject exiting the immediate vicinity. The path taken was notable for what it avoided: all major highways, suggesting a deliberate effort at counter-surveillance. Sheriff Nanos has officially confirmed that the investigative team is fully aware of this footage, and it remains a key active lead in their ongoing inquiry. With hundreds of thousands of vehicles being cross-referenced through advanced analytical software, a digital dragnet is closing. Investigators are executing a massive process of elimination, searching for a single vehicle whose presence in the neighborhood registers as a statistical anomaly. They are hunting for a pattern of surveillance established in the days leading up to February 1st. The target is a vehicle that must match the make and model observed by the Ring camera. Critically, it must be registered to an individual who aligns with the carefully constructed behavioral profile. With artificial intelligence conducting the heavy computational work, that process is unfolding with a speed that most people cannot comprehend. The perpetrator believed he was cloaked in anonymity, just another car moving through the deep hours of the morning. What he failed to calculate is that every camera he passed became a silent witness, contributing to a repository of 10,000 hours of footage that is now being meticulously dissected. The objective is to isolate every single frame in which his presence was recorded. His operational security was disciplined, a full-body suit to prevent any transfer of trace evidence. He utilized multiple pairs of gloves to ensure no latent fingerprints could betray his identity. His face was so thoroughly obscured that conventional video identification was rendered useless. And then, in a single unforced error, an attempt to obstruct a camera he didn't realize was already recording, he exposed one of the most immutable physical identifiers an individual can possess: a tattoo located on the underside of his right wrist. The doorbell footage documents the masked subject's deliberate approach toward the residence. The moment he recognizes the camera's presence, he retreats, pulls a branch from nearby vegetation, and moves to physically obscure the lens. In performing this action, his wrist rotated just enough into the light. Jim Clemente, in his review of the footage, believes the camera captured the distinct markings of that tattoo. The subject likely operated under the assumption that he had disabled the device. In reality, he provided investigators with a permanent, high-contrast record of his own skin. The FBI used this image to establish a more concrete physical description. A male, approximately 5'9" to 5'10" in height, with an average build and a potential identifying mark on his right wrist. That marking is critical. Tattoos are permanent, they are specific, and they are searchable. Should investigators isolate a person of interest through cellular data or genetic genealogy, one of the first points of physical corroboration will be to look for a tattoo on the right wrist that is consistent with the captured image. It is a binary identifier that cannot be explained away. You either possess the mark or you do not. This is the state of the active investigation at this exact moment. Deep inside the Bureau's field offices and its sophisticated forensic laboratories, the work intensifies. CAST analysts have compiled a list of cellular devices exhibiting anomalous travel patterns around the victim's home between January 11th and February 1st. That list contains dozens of potential devices of interest. Most have been vetted and cleared: local residents, delivery drivers, routine commuters. But a small number of these digital signatures remain entirely unexplained. The camera analysis system has cross-referenced hundreds of thousands of vehicles against the one observed leaving the scene at 2 a.m. The list of potential matches is systematically shrinking by the hour. Genetic genealogists are meticulously building family trees from the unknown DNA profile recovered from inside the home. They are comparing these complex genealogical maps against millions of consumer ancestry profiles. Each confirmed branch of a family tree significantly narrows the vast pool of potential subjects. Following a 26-day hold, digital forensics experts successfully extracted the complete historical location data from Annie's vehicle. That vehicle's entire GPS history has now been graphically mapped. Every location it visited in the critical weeks before the victim's disappearance is now a known data point. In parallel, behavioral analysts are combing through threat assessment databases, flagging individuals with documented histories of pathological fixation. The specific focus of that fixation is the public figure Savannah Guthrie. These are not separate, isolated investigations. They are tactical threads, all converging on a single, inevitable point. Former FBI Special Agent Jennifer Coffin-Daffer articulated the investigative principle with chilling clarity. You do not require every fragment of evidence to bring a case to resolution. What is necessary is a critical mass of evidentiary pieces that, when assembled, can only form the portrait of a single individual. Envision this sequence of events, for this is how it will almost certainly unfold. Cellular analysis teams isolate a specific phone number X that went dark at 1 o'clock in the morning, only to reactivate at 3 a.m., 15 miles to the south. Simultaneously, genetic genealogy constructs a family lineage. That lineage ultimately points to a singular family name within the Tucson area. That very surname corresponds with the registered owner of the target phone number X. Video synopsis software then confirms a vehicle, registered to that same owner, was captured on camera departing the area at 2 o'clock in the morning. Behavioral analysts subsequently confirm the owner possesses a documented history of attempted contact with Savannah Guthrie, beginning with fan letters. This behavior escalated to social media messages and culminated in unauthorized appearances at NBC studios. And when they execute a DMV photo comparison, they observe a distinctive tattoo on his right wrist. These are not 5 disparate pieces of evidence. They are 5 interlocking data points that can only fit one person. As former FBI agent Jason Pack stated to Fox News, once an investigation reaches this critical point of convergence, the arrest is executed with exceptional speed. When all investigative threads terminate at the same identity, you do not hesitate, you move. On the 2nd of March, Sheriff Chris Nanos advised NBC News that his investigators are now definitively closer to closing the case. He expressed his full faith, full confidence that they will resolve this, and then he offered something more. A statement that carries immense weight when you fully comprehend what the evidence profile suggests. I personally believe Nancy Guthrie is alive. That is not a statement crafted for public relations. That is a sheriff, more than a month into one of the most intensely scrutinized cases in the nation, staking his entire professional reputation on that conviction. Former FBI agent Jason Pack provided the context. When a sheriff makes a public declaration of that magnitude, it's because the body of evidence supports it. They are holding something. Some piece of intelligence that indicates to them that Nancy may still be alive. When a law enforcement official stakes his reputation on such a statement, you listen. Somewhere in Tucson, Arizona, or just beyond its periphery, a phone lies dormant inside a drawer. It has been there since the 1st of February, powered off, concealed from view. The owner believes he is secure. He believes the temporal gap in the data was his shield, that deactivating his phone before 1 a.m. and keeping it inert until he was miles away was a sufficient countermeasure. What he fails to grasp is that the gap is the data. The cellular analysis team found it 3 weeks ago. They know the precise moment the phone disconnected, and they know the precise moment it reconnected to the network. They know the specific tower it communicated with at 3 in the morning, 15 miles south of Nancy's home. And now they are constructing the case piece by methodical piece. They are comparing that phone's historical pattern of life data to the established timeline of the abduction. They are matching reconnaissance trips made in January to the digital blackout on February 1st. They are cross-referencing the exit ping to the vehicle recorded at 2 in the morning and running the subject's phone number through layers of investigative databases. They are building a genealogical map from the DNA he unknowingly left inside Nancy's residence, waiting for the singular genetic match that will give them a name. And when that name materializes, when that branch of the family tree leads to one specific person associated with one specific phone number, a phone that went dark at 1 o'clock in the morning and came back online at 3 a.m., 15 miles to the south, they will not call first. They will arrive with a warrant. They will look for the tattoo on his right wrist. They will seize the phone from the drawer, and they will compare the DNA on file to the very breath he exhaled for 41 minutes. Inside Nancy's home, the threads are converging. Not today, not this week, but imminently. He was driven by a desire for celebrity obsession. He craved psychological control. He demanded Savannah Guthrie's attention, and he received it. But what he wanted will not save him. What he left behind will ensnare him. On the 2nd of March, 2026, for the first time since the 1st of February, Savannah Guthrie crossed the threshold into the silent rooms of her mother's house. The residence had been formally released by authorities, its forensic potential exhausted after a methodical evidence sweep. She moved with a deliberate slowness through the space, her hand brushing against the couch, the precise location her mother would occupy while reading. Her gaze drifted to the kitchen counter, a silent monument to a ritual Nancy had performed every morning for 50 years. A wall calendar, arrested in time, still displayed the month of January. Later, she was joined by her sister, Annie, and brother-in-law, Tommaso. At the growing memorial outside the home, Savannah placed a bouquet of yellow flowers, an act she then documented with a photograph for Instagram. The accompanying text read, "We feel the love and prayers from our neighbors, from the Tucson community, and from around the country." It concluded with a plea. "Please don't stop praying and hoping with us. Bring her home." It is that last phrase which contains the agonizing core of this case, a profound ambiguity that has come to define every aspect of the investigation. The imperative is not tell us what happened, nor is it help us find justice. It is bring her home an active present tense demand. This reveals a family that, in the face of all available information, is consciously holding on to the possibility that Nancy Guthrie is still alive, and, crucially, that she is recoverable. The sheriff himself has chosen to echo this sentiment. The one man with total access to every piece of intelligence the FBI is currently processing is making a calculated, on-the-record assertion that he, too, believes this. And so, Nancy Guthrie's family waits. The investigators continue their work, systematically deconstructing the timeline of events. And the subject, the man who believed he could violently inject himself into a celebrity's life, is poised to learn that his motivations are now irrelevant. The only thing that matters is the trail he left behind. Every breath, every electronic ping, every frame of video, every single strand of DNA, all of it is forming a constellation of evidence, and every data point is converging directly on him. If you possess any information pertaining to the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie, you are urged to contact the FBI at 1-800-CALL-FBI. You can also reach the Pima County Sheriff's Department at 520-514-900. Anonymous intelligence may be submitted electronically at tips.thefbi.gov. A $1 million reward is being offered by the Guthrie family for information that leads to Nancy's recovery. The FBI has authorized an additional $100,000. This reward is payable anonymously and is not contingent upon an arrest or a criminal conviction. The sole condition is information that results in Nancy Guthrie's safe return. It is imperative that this investigation remains in the public consciousness. Maintain awareness of the ongoing search. Follow the new information as this case continues to develop and unfold. Consider the available evidence from every possible angle. Will this case ultimately be broken by a deep psychological profile of the suspect? Or will the immutable facts of forensic science provide the final answer? These are not case numbers. These are real people and real lives. Real families are suspended in an agonizing wait for resolution. And somewhere, inside the mountains of data being meticulously analyzed, is the key that will ultimately bring Nancy Guthrie home. The trail you leave behind. Every single day, you leave a trail, not just footprints in the dirt, but digital echoes, biological whispers, and invisible signatures that follow you everywhere. The abduction of Nancy Guthrie, an 4-year-old grandmother and retired educator, is a profound reminder of this truth. One man believed he could vanish into the dark. He wore a mask, gloves, and a bodysuit. He turned off his phone. He thought he was invisible. He was wrong. He forgot that every breath he exhaled for 41 minutes left his DNA suspended in the air. He forgot that his phone's silence, its very absence from the network, became evidence of guilt. He forgot that a single exposed wrist, a single tattoo glimpsed on a doorbell camera, could become the thread that unravels everything. This is the lesson modern science teaches us. You cannot outrun what you leave behind. But this story is also about something deeper, the devastating cost of obsession. When a person becomes so consumed by the need to feel significant, to matter to someone who doesn't know they exist, the result is not connection, it is destruction. Real significance is never seized through fear or control. It is built through kindness, through contribution, through the quiet dignity of a life well lived. Nancy Guthrie lived that life. And somewhere, a family is still waiting to bring her home. If you have information, call 1-800-CALL-FBI. Real people, real lives. Real urgency.